just to list, as you can see, these are some of the languages which have very large number of speakers around the world, and which includes Mandarin Chinese, Spanish, English, Hindi, Bengali, and so on. So for the internet to be accessible globally, of course, internet, and not only the content of the internet, but also internet's addressing system needs to be able to be in these languages which people use and speak across the world. Next slide, please. So, Africa itself is extremely diverse as far as languages spoken is concerned. There are more than 2,000 languages spoken across Africa. And, some of the, what I did was I actually just went and saw what are some of the more spoken languages in Africa. Again, currently what the internet addressing system, or more traditionally what the internet addressing system was to use letters A to Z and digits 0 to 9 in the domain name part. And that, and I guess what I wanted to look at was that, how many of these languages can be used in the internet domain name or internet addressing system, if we were to look at it from an Africa context. And all these languages which are listed in blue, they normally have characters or letters which go beyond the traditional English A to Z letters. They have additional letters. You have tone marks in African languages, which are used to write the African languages more concretely. So many of the African languages which are listed here, for example, you would not be able to formulate a domain name if you use the more traditional, what is called the ASCII domain names. And you have to use a more extended form of domain name for internet, which is normally referred to as internationalized domain names. And we'll talk about that a little more later. Just looking at Ghana itself, some of the languages which are, there are more than 80 languages spoken in Ghana, and some of them which have a larger number of speakers. Even those languages use letters and characters which go beyond just your traditional A to Z letters used in English, for example. So even if you want to support language like Akan or Twi, Iwe, and others, these languages, you would need to have internationalized domain names to do a proper domain name in a local language. Next slide, please. So, this is slightly older statistics from ITU, but what you can see is, as far as the whole world is concerned, about 60% of the population is now using the internet, which means 40% of the people are not using internet. If you look at the statistics from, for example, South Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa, they're lower, lower than 40%, for example, which means that the next billion people who are actually going to come online, beyond the 5.3 billion which are already online, are going to be mostly coming from these regions, and these are the people who will be speaking their own local languages, and they need a support of internationalized domain names or domain names in local languages and domain email addresses in local languages, for example, for them to have proper access. Next slide, please. So internet as an organization manages multiple resources, which include the internet protocol addresses, but more importantly, in our context here, also the domain names, especially the top level domains, which are delegated through the root zone of the internet. Next slide, please. So just to sort of share with you what the, how a domain name is formulated, and you're all probably familiar with this already. A domain name can actually have multiple labels, and each of those labels is separated by a dot. And these labels form what is normally referred to an address of a website, for example, an online resource. And you can eventually type these domain names to get to content online, or you will use those to access content online. And therefore, for a domain name, eventually, if you look at the last part of it, there are what is called the top level domains. We are familiar with .org or .com or .gh, for example. So there are the generic top level domains and also the country code top level domains, which are possible. And now you can also have these domain names and top level domains as well, other levels of domain names, second level and third level domains, for example, all in local languages as well. And then you can obviously also formulate email addresses. When we talk about email addresses, we have obviously the mailbox name, which is the user name before that sign, and then we have the domain name after that sign. And we'll come back to this a bit more, but ICANN's focus, of course, has been mostly on the top level domains, and we facilitate and support the community in enabling the top level domains. Next slide, please. So we talked about this briefly. So in the past, top level domains were largely formed using letters A through Z. So .com or .org, they're all just simply letters A through Z, which are used in English. But more recently, almost a decade ago, in 2012, ICANN worked with the community to expand the domain name system. And what that did was introduce around 1,200 more top-level domains in the internet system. So we now actually have .photography, not just .com and .org, but you can also register a domain name under .photography or .london or .pizza or .sports and so on. So there are now 1,200 choices for you to develop your own domain name, which matches more with your interest and with your choice, for example. And in addition to just having more options in just the more traditional A to Z, you can also have these domain names in your local languages. So as you can see in the examples here, there are two top-level domain names, one in Chinese and one in Arabic script. But it's not just limited to these two scripts. You can actually have these in many other scripts as well. An interesting thing to note now is that even though traditionally the top-level domain names were limited to 2 or 3 characters, the standard does not limit them to a short length. These can be much longer. The standards allows for anything up to 63 characters. And now you can see that like .photography and .london, these are now much longer than 2 or 3 characters, the top level domains. And the next round of GTLDs will, ICANN and the community are planning a next round of GTLDs or generic top level domains. And it will continue to expand the domain name system and give new opportunity to the next billion people waiting to access to a more multilingual and inclusive internet. So there will be a possibility for communities to add more top-level domains in the near future when the next new GTLD round starts. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So this is just sort of just capturing the progress of top-level domains over last 20, 10, 15 years or so. Before 2009, it was only possible to have those there was just very limited set of top-level domains. And then after 2009, I can work with the community to start what is called the internationalized domain name country code top-level domain fast track process, through which many countries, if you see the middle column, were able to get their top-level domains in their own local languages, not just .gh, for example, for Ghana, but China got in addition to .cn, they also got the top-level domain in Chinese, for example. And there were multiple countries in North Africa, for example, who got their top-level domain in Arabic script and language. And in 2012 onwards, there was also a new generic top-level domain program launched, which we just talked about, which allowed for expanding the generic top-level domains to many now. And there are some examples here, including those which were internationalized or in local languages. Next slide, please. Sorry, we got one back. So as domain names became available in all these different configurations, including those in local languages, it was then also possible to have email addresses in local languages as well. And what that is normally referred to as internationalized email addresses, or email address internationalization, EAI for short. And we've Internet Engineering Task Force, which developed the basic standards for internationalized domain names. They also developed the standards for internationalized email addresses, and that is now actually getting implemented. So many of the tools and technologies, email tools currently are supporting these. Okay, so I've been asked to speak a little more loudly. It is now possible to have internationalized email addresses as well, meaning that email addresses can also be in your local languages. Next slide, please. Yeah, very good. Why do we need internationalized domain names, or why do we need internationalized email addresses? That's a question. And I think one of the things which we all understand and appreciate is that the web does not only connect machines, right? It connects people. And when you're connecting people, the way people communicate is in their own languages. That's the most effective way of communicating between people. And you want to bring the same experience online as you have offline talking to people. And to do that, obviously, domain name system, in addition to just the content of online content, but also the addressing system of internet, also needs to support all these languages and scripts. This is a map of how the different scripts are used across the globe. And interesting thing to note is that Arabic, of course, Arabic script is used to write languages in north part of Africa. Latin script, as we just saw, not just English alphabet, but extended Latin with multiple characters, additional characters than A to Z are used to write many languages. Can you go back to the last slide, please? Let's go back one slide. Yeah. Then there are also, interestingly, other scripts which are used in Africa. So we have the Ethiopic script, which is used. It has its own writing system. In addition, we have Tifinagh, which is used in northwest of Africa. And then Ango and Y, there are additional scripts which are used in Africa, West Africa. So eventually, to provide access to communities in Africa, the addressing system, we need to be able to support extended Latin script, to support many of the languages which are used in Africa, in the addressing system of internet as well, also Arabic script, but also beyond Arabic and extended Latin, Ethiopic, Tifnig, and some of the other scripts as well. Next slide, please. And ICANN continues to do this. They've been working with all the different countries globally to provide additional top-level domains in addition to just the ASCII or English ones, two-letter codes. And you can see here that many countries across the globe have actually indicated their interest and have worked with ICANN to delegate these country code top-level domains for their own citizens across the globe. And there are a few of them, of course, in Africa as well, mostly in Africa case in Arabic so far. But it is also, of course, possible to have these top-level domains in other scripts and languages of Africa, as long as those languages are used officially in the countries. Next slide, please. In addition to that, the generic top-level domains are also now possible, and these are some examples of top-level domains in all the different languages and scripts. 91 of them, which were delegated through the 2012 round. There's another round coming, and as I shared, a community can actually apply for local language top-level domains in that upcoming round as well to address their own needs. Next slide, please. These are just some examples of domain names which are now possible. These are all, by the way, domain names which are active, so you can actually click on them and it will take you to a website. So these domain names work. Next slide, please. These are examples of some email addresses. These are also functional email addresses, so you can actually write an email to this one of these email addresses, and you will get an auto response back. So all these domain names and email addresses are actually now possible. Next slide, please. So it's now possible to have domain names with new top-level domains which are longer than 3 letters. For example, you can also have domain names in local scripts. I'm sharing an example of Thai domain name here. And then you can actually formulate local language domain names and email addresses. So there are multiple categories of domain names and email addresses possible now. And what universal acceptance, what we're talking here is that all of these actually should be supported by the applications you're developing, the web pages or websites you're developing for the universities. And also, you should be able to support all these kind of email addresses through your mail servers. So that if you have a student who wants to use their own local language. So for example, if somebody is in Ethiopia and they want to use an Ethiopic email address, and then they want to write to somebody, for example, at AAU Secretariat. Is the Secretariat of Association of African Universities able to receive that email with email address in Ethiopic script? Or is the email system of AAU not upgraded so that that email will be bounced back and your system will say that it's an invalid email address because your system is not updated? So to be able to support everyone from across Africa, you need to make sure that systems for all the universities, for AAU, they need to be upgraded to be able to support not just email systems, but also websites, applications which you're using. For example, if you're using Moodle or some other learning management systems and you're enrolling students in it, will or somebody from Ethiopia using Ethiopic email address be able to enroll in a learning management system using an Ethiopic email address, for example? Or, if you're talking about Ghana, if somebody is using UA or TWI and they're using this extended Latin domain name or email address, will they be able to participate at the university platforms? So those are the I think one of the things which we are trying to do with the this UA Readiness project through CDA is work with all the different universities to make sure that the technology is for all these universities updated to be able to support all the African students and faculty members and the African community to be part of who are part of AAU. Next slide, please. So here's an example of what we did was, or what I did was, went to a website and sort of to show you what the problem is. So there was, I've sort of cropped, so you can't really see which website it is, but just to illustrate the problem, I went to their email address part where I wanted to subscribe to a newsletter. And I typed in an Arabic email address rather than an English email address. And when I said enter, this website said that please enter a valid email address. Even though it is actually a valid email address, but it is just an email address in Arabic. But the application which was developed on this website didn't realize that now email addresses can actually be in all these different languages. So it was not configured properly, and it actually thought that it's actually a wrong email address. And maybe some of the websites which you use for your universities, for example, behave similarly, and that's not very inclusive, right? So you need to go back that the email part or the domain name part, they allow everybody to be able to participate in the process. Next slide, please. So we went around and saw, try to measure how prevalent this problem is. And one of the things we did was we went to the top 1,000 websites around the globe. So, you can get Alexa rankings and other rankings of websites around the globe. So we picked up the top 1,000. And for those websites, if you look at the second row from the top, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. The second row from the top represents an email address in a local language. So top one is Arabic. The second one is, for example, Chinese or any other language, for example, which you use in Africa, for example. And we put that email address on their contact us page, where they say that, if you want to contact us, please give us your email address and we'll get back to you. So we put that email address, Chinese email address, for example, in the contact us page and said, can you accept this? And we only found that out of the 1,000 websites, only about 9 or 10% of the websites were able to support a non-English website, a non-English email address. Other websites, around 900 out of 1,000, said this is an invalid email address. So that's how significant the problem is. It's more than the problem is 90% of the websites out there are just not developed properly. Not just websites. Next slide, please. We also looked at mail servers. So we, using the entry in the zone file, we pinged about 35 million mail servers around the world, which are registered under the generic top-level domains. And we found that only about 21.66%, that's a number in the right bottom there, are configured to accept non-English or these email addresses. So it's not just a problem with websites, it's also a problem with mail servers. They're not just properly configured to send and receive email addresses from such in local languages, for example. Next slide, please. Let's go to the next one. Let's skip this. So what's the goal of universal acceptance? It's a very straightforward, simple goal. All, as a member of the global internet community, I can have a domain name and email address in my own language and script. That's not a bad thing to have. That's a good thing to have. But does my email address and my domain name get accepted by your website or your email server? It should be like any other if I use my English email and my English domain name, your website is going to accept it and your email server is going to accept it. But if I use my domain name and my email address in my language, it doesn't get accepted. And that's where the gap is. And that's what we are trying to fix. So all valid domain names and email addresses should work in all software applications. That's really our goal. And what that does, if you update your systems, it will promote choice for, in your case, your students, your faculty members, your community. It will provide better access to your community. And it's just basically our way of contributing to a very multilingual and inclusive internet. Next slide, please. So, achieving universal acceptance ensures everyone has the ability to navigate and communicate on the internet using their chosen domain names and email addresses, which best align with their interests, with their business, with their culture, with their language, and with their script. And if we can enable UA, we support a diverse and multilingual internet. We enable greater competition, innovation, and consumer choice. We create business opportunities. We offer career advantages for developers and system administrators. And we also assist governments and policymakers to better reach out to their own citizens. So there are obviously very significant advantages of doing this. And we're only talking about the addressing system here. Content obviously is also a big part of all this. But to get to the content, address shows you the way. Address will get you. Require even to access your own content, you have to type the email address in a foreign language. Of course, that doesn't work very well. Next slide, please. So let's go one more slide. Let's one back, please. Yeah. So what does universal acceptance means? Universal acceptance means that all these different kind of domain names and email addresses which we've been talking about, your websites, your email servers, all the applications you are developing, like learning management systems, they should be able to accept all these different kinds of domain names and email addresses. They should be able to validate them. They should be able to process them as needed. They should be able to store them, and they should be able to display them. So those are the 5 requirements, sort of technical requirements of universal acceptance. And we're planning to do a training tomorrow, which will look much more deeply into the technical side of things. So, let's wait till tomorrow for those details. Next slide, please. And let's go to the next one. One back. Yeah. So what can you do as a university member, as a member of faculty, or a decision maker in a university? What can academia do as far as universal acceptance is concerned? First of all, I think to do this sustainably, we need to train the next generations of students to understand that this is something we need to do for our communities. And to be able to do that, what we need to do is update our curriculum so that these aspects of technology are taught in the programming courses, in the networking courses, in the database courses, so in the IT curricula. This concept of internationalization is part of the teaching process, so that anybody who graduates through the university, through these technical programs, is already aware of this requirement. And when they go and develop these applications and websites, they're doing it in an inclusive way, so that when they develop a website, they can bring everybody in Africa online. We need to train the faculty and students to adopt UA practices. So not just, of course, the curricula need to be updated. Obviously, there needs to be some level of training for faculty members, especially, so that they understand So somebody who's teaching a programming course, they need to understand not only how to use a ASCII or, but also how to use Unicode and, train students on internationalization concepts. Somebody who's teaching a networking course, they should also, in addition to the DNS protocols, they should be able to talk about internationalized domain name protocols and protocols for internet email address internationalization. Universities also sometimes have software development teams and system administration teams. These teams manage and maintain the websites of universities and their email systems. So those teams need to be trained so that they can upgrade the university systems. We talked about the learning management systems. So the teams which are normally maintaining those need to be upgraded as well. So we need to train these people, and then these people, all these university staff, they need to work towards making sure that university systems are then upgraded. They can work with all these different kind of domain names and email addresses. And then as a university, you need to also create a larger ecosystem. So you need to not only update your own systems and train your own students, but spread this message in the community at large. So talk to the software development industry through seminars and webinars, and the larger ecosystem in each of your countries to make people aware that this is currently a gap which need to be addressed. Next slide, please. Next slide. One slide back, sorry. Yeah. So there are multiple ways. One slide forward, please. So this is sort of just an overview of universal acceptance. You can get more information from us by emailing us at info@usg.tech or uaprogram@icann.org. We have actually a community which is actively working towards promoting universal acceptance. You can join that global community online. We are currently doing, for example, developing trainings, updating, doing a lot of work, which is, a lot of community across the globe contributes to it. So there are ways to contribute. You can subscribe or join one of our working groups. Next slide, please. And you can also join ICANN in multiple ways, beyond just universal acceptance. So ICANN offers a fellowship program for professionals to come and interact with the ICANN community at ICANN meetings. We also have a next gen program where the younger faculty or students can come and interact with ICANN. So please look at these programs online and contribute to UA, contribute to ICANN. And also, I think we'll be working with all of you to develop, making the UA, your own university systems universal acceptance ready. That's the end of my slides. Next slide, please. You can connect us through the different social media channels, follow what's going on. Again, please feel free to connect with us if you have any questions by emailing us at uaprogram@icann. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samad, for these clarifications. Of course, it's open to, if you have any question, please come forward. We'll still have some time for that. We already have one question from here.
Thank you very much, Samad. I can see from the email address internationalization that a whole lot of characters have now been included in domain names and email addressing. What are some of the cybersecurity challenges that come as a result of this, and how do we deal with those? Thank you.
DNS security and stability is a very significant topic, and something which we've been looking at it very carefully as we're expanding the domain name space. The way we've done this is that we've actually developed, I skipped one of those slides, but we've developed what I call the root zone label generation rules. These are very constrained rules which we've developed for each of the scripts which are now possible for top-level domains. So, for example, for Chinese or for Ethiopic in Africa or Arabic. And the way we've done this is that we've actually worked with local communities. We've gone to these communities because ICANN doesn't have expertise for all these scripts and languages. What we did was we actually worked with the community over since 2013, so about 10 years now. And we worked with Chinese community, we worked with Japanese community, and so on, with all the different communities which use all these scripts. And we developed panels, and we worked with these panels, and the local community guided us on how to formulate the domain names. And the only reason for doing this very carefully, so just to give you an example, the panel for Arabic script contained 33 experts from about 22 countries. And they worked for about 3 years to develop standards which we should adopt for top-level domains for Arabic language and script. And what their main task was that we want to make sure that top-level domain names are developed in a way that they remain very secure and stable. So we've done this very carefully over the last 10 years, working with each of the script communities and making sure that the solution we provide is secure in a way that, if anybody uses domain names in any of these scripts and languages, it is done very securely and very stably. So we put in, with the support of the community and actually the leadership of community, we put in a lot of effort to actually address that. Yeah. Let's see.
Mine is not a question, and my name is Dr. Abdul Majid Idrisu. I'm the Director IT for the National Communications Authority, and the Honorable Minister's speech actually encompassed all of us, and we will do all that we can to support this. Fortunately for me, coming also from the academia into regulation, I think we'll be able to provide a lot of input in actualizing this coalition to be able to get all of us to make sure that as we want universal acceptance, we would support in regulating the people to make sure the infrastructure is available to places and people. Once they accept it and they don't have the infrastructure to be able to use it, we'll come back to ground zero, and I think we would push it through our policies to make sure we cover up everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Frank Asifua. I'm the Senior Web Developer at AU. I'm also a project manager for a project called the African Jobs Board. Now, my question is about the using of the various characters. Now, the question is usually when, apart from Fortune 500 companies, which usually buy multiple domains to make sure that anybody who is trying to access their sites is able to get through all the top level domains, very few companies do that. So if personally I'm setting up a personal business, I would either choose to use, let's say, myname.com, etc., or the new one that is being universally accepted, let's say sankofa.gh. But if somebody accesses it in another, without using that same case in terms of the key allowing it to access it, is SEO going to support to make sure that they are addressed to the right places? Because usually when you set up your websites, it's difficult for a lot of people to find you, except they type your URL correctly or perfectly. So how would you be able to augment that with the various characters coming in? Because that would be a major challenge in my perspective.
So there are two questions here. One is around accessibility. If somebody doesn't have the keys to type, then how will they be able to, for example, access a website? The second one is around search engine optimization, SEO, whether such domain names, for example, would perform equally well under SEO. So I'll take each of them separately. As far as the access through keyboard and such is concerned, eventually I think initially, like 10 years, 20 years back, it was very difficult to find keyboards to write a local language. But over time, it has become very easy. So for example, if I talk about my own local language, I can now easily find a keyboard on a laptop. I just have to obviously go and configure it so that it is added in addition to the English. Most of the laptops by default come with just an English keyboard, but you can actually go to language options and add a keyboard for most of the languages now, I think. And if your language is still not represented, the way to do it is that there's actually a project by Unicode where you can actually, it's called CLDR, Common Locale Data Repository. What that does is that a community can actually develop a locale, well, that's what it's called, for a particular language, and add that to CLDR. And then once it gets added into Unicode standard, it will eventually get adopted by the different operating systems like iOS or Windows and so on. So, but the way things are, even today, most of the languages have their keyboards represented on phone as well. So on phone, I think it's even easier because switching to a local language keyboard, it's, you should be able to find keyboards for your own local languages as well. And if you cannot, then there are mechanisms. So for example, on Android, you could go and talk to relevant people and get your keyboards added as well. So accessibility, keyboards is becoming less of a challenge moving forward. There may still be languages for which keyboards are not available, and there are mechanisms now in which communities can get those keyboards available as well. So I think that part gets better and better over time. But if you need to, as a community member, see that your languages are represented, and if they're not, make sure that you can contribute that to the whole ecosystem. As far as SEO is concerned, different search engines use different kind of algorithms. Normally, those algorithms are looking at, for example, how frequently a website is accessed, how many different websites are accessing or linking to that website, or how many websites are being linked through that website, and so on. So many of those metrics are not really dependent on characters, but usage and linkages. Therefore, I think in some ways, just having a website which is in a different character would probably not make a difference as long as as I said, usage and linkages are significant. One of the things we didn't talk about, we'll talk about tomorrow in technical training, is that these internationalized domain names, when you are actually using it on the wire, they actually get internally mapped onto an equivalent ASCII version, which is called the A-label version. So internally, it's still ASCII. And so SEO, if it's actually working, it could obviously use the Unicode version or the internal ASCII version. Either way, I think it should potentially work. Again, we haven't done a lot of testing on SEO. That's actually an interesting area for us to look into. And what I'll do is I'll take that back to our community, which is working on UA gaps. And maybe we can look at some of the SEO technology as well and see how effective or not effective it is. In some ways, I think it should still work. Since we haven't done an analysis on it, I cannot give you sort of a concrete numbers or answers on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to suggest that maybe we also ask if there are questions online, but I just wanted to recognize some of the people that are connected online. I won't recognize all of them. I see that Professor Wahab Ekbewole from the University of Ilorin, he's the Vice Chancellor. He's connected and is connected with his team. And he said, very good initiative by AAU and ICANN. Congratulations. We also had a comment from Rolanda Apabe from the University for Development Studies in Ghana, who said, congratulations. Sheriff Dean Taylor, I don't know where they are connecting from, but said, hopefully Africa will own her technology like other people. Anthony Rodriguez from Houston, Texas, School of Public Affairs also said greetings from Houston. We also have a professor connected from Morocco, Al-Akawin University in Morocco said congratulations. Abdu Dabo in Gambia also said greetings from the Gambia. Professor Juliet Macharia from Karatina University in Nairobi. Professor Chinwe Christie Istua from Admiralty University of Nigeria. Greetings from Barara University in Uganda. I think I am not seeing that name. And then Kabale University, Jones Murangira. Richard from Botswana Institute of Science and Technology, I believe. Nkumba University in Ghana, John William Otim. Dr. Oswell Hapanyengwi from the University of Zimbabwe. Yes, Dr. Coyote at Rinsola. And then Dr. Hussein from Himilo University in Mogadishu, Somalia. So there's a diversity of people that are connected online. I think if there are any that would want to ask a question, one or two, I believe that would be good. But I don't see any hands yet. Yeah, so thank you very much.
So maybe we give a minute for somebody online to see if they have any question. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to you here.
Yeah, unless anyone online, feel free to come up with any question or comments you may have. But I just wanted to reflect on discussion I just had this morning with yourself from the ministry, and also from my good friend Sani, was about, and you said it also, Samad, how do you kind of generate those scripts that we are talking about? And you mentioned on country level or whatever, groups that we do have, how we can organize this thing. And you also give the example of what we did with Ethiopia, for instance. And I think that Asani was alluded to something that could be done here in Ghana, for instance. And when we are this sort of moment of, raising consciousness, talking about those things, we also like to think about concrete, activity that we may be conducting at some point. So when you come to Ghana, for instance, question for you could be, having heard about those things, what are your ideas? How do you feel that you could kind of self-organize? And how can we support? Because that's what we do, but it has to come from yourself. So if you have any idea, I know you, Sunny, you had a good idea on that. I think if you want to share maybe your views, and the professors who are you all are around, it's the best place for us to be, actually, when you are talking about those things. Samad told about so many things that he talked about, the software, generation is quite important, and whereas, do we have this, work power, to work on those things? I think it should be university. So I would like to let you guys tell us quickly what you think, what could be your sort of outline of the idea you may have. Professor Jidono is also there. I was not expecting him, but he's around. I know he has good ideas. How do we do those things, on country level or linguistic level? For instance, Amat, one of the dreams here in Africa, for instance, is to work on Swahili, for instance, and have groups, at hand. Anyone want to share anything? But we are in Ghana, and I would like us to be hearing from you. There is no pressure here, but has to listen to how you feel about, having heard from Samat. Professor Sani?
This language problem, to Professor Jidono is here, right? This language problem has been one of the challenges that has made it the internet penetration to grow in for that matter, Africa. Because if you compare internet penetration and you look at mobile phone penetration, you see that the mobile penetration is very, very high, and internet is still growing because this has to do with language. The mobile phone is language neutral. Because if I take a phone, I want to talk to my grandmother, I talk in my language. But if I have to communicate on the internet, I have to speak in English, right? And so I think we are making progress. This project should have come much earlier, right? But I think it has to do with more of collaborative research, convergence of disciplines, where you have linguists and computer scientists and psychologists working together. And I like the Ethiopian experience. And we know Microsoft helped Swahili to develop their character set, right? So the issue is we have to take a conscious effort, make a conscious effort, and constitute teams to work together across disciplines to arrive at something that will be fruitful and beneficial to everybody. But is it just the name, the domain names and the email addresses that we are going to look at, or we're going to scale it up to content as well? And this is going to bring scalability challenges that we have to deal with. More so when we have so many languages in Africa, right? So this is just thinking aloud, but I think that the starting point could be drawing on the lessons in Ethiopia, what Microsoft did to Swahili in East Africa, and I think we can make a progress.
As I shared, we've already done a lot of homework over the last 10 years to develop these rules for all the different scripts. But if there are any particular languages or scripts which are still need work, we just an email away. Let us know, get in touch with us, and we'll work with you to make sure that the domain name addressing system is at least able to support the languages and scripts which you use locally, if it's not already supported. So we're more than happy to continue this work and support all the African community. Of course, that's the eventually target. So more than happy to continue this work. Again, please, if you see there are current limitations, please let us know, and we'll work with the community. So with that, should I just hand it back to you? I think we're done.
Thank you, Samad. I think at this point we can close this discussion. Unless anyone has any urgent matter to talk about, it's fine. So do we deserve this cocktail as you heard? Sorry? Yes, but no, I just wanted to make sure that this cocktail is waiting for us. Okay, so yes, acknowledgement to Mrs. Roth, Labe, representing Methodist University. Thanks for coming and sharing your views. Thanks, Madam. Sorry. Yes. Oh, you want to make a comment? No, she was just, I understood that. Okay, and then Mr. Francis Kwabena, from Chief Technology Officer representing UGVC. Thanks for coming. Thanks. I mentioned earlier my good friend, Professor Jidonu. Don't hide yourself, please. Jidonu, you're always hiding, but he's a powerhouse. He has so many things to say, especially on African level. Thanks for coming here. And with that, Professor, I would like to listen to you because we are at the end. So you do have some information for us. I don't know. No, it's okay.
I just want to thank you for such a very important and significant launch. And I hope that it will serve as a very great starting point for a lot of standardization and innovation going forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you very much also for the ministry for supporting us into this. And I'm hopeful that we will have deliverables to show. And I hope that will also help us move the digital transformation in Africa. Thanks very much for coming. And last, no, you come from so far away. You have a time.
So as part of this project, one of the things which we are doing is we're going to look at the websites and email services of all the different universities which are part of the AAU, and share the feedback back to the universities on how many of their websites and email servers are UA ready, and if there are any gaps, what are the gaps, so that we can work with each of the members on focused areas, and work with them to see if they can actually make their websites and email systems UA ready. So that's some of the things which we'll be doing as part of this project moving forward, in addition to obviously just the training and engagement. So again, tomorrow we actually have a full day of technical training. If you're interested to learn more from a technical perspective, please join us tomorrow. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Please, we'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Ben Okra from UPSA and Madam Moda Shong from UPSA. Thank you. Please, the refreshment is on the other side, so you can take a group photograph and go for refreshment. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, please, we take the photograph over here.